Cool. Cool. So, we put together a quick thing because we've been working on a lot of stuff in Zap protocol for a good portion of the last year since both Ad and I have been started here, and it's been really cool. And we wanted to talk about what are bonding curves. You want to kick this off with me, Ad?
Sure, absolutely. Go for it. Go right into it. You're doing great.
Okay. So it's basically a reason why we're speaking is because we want to really like exercise like this one particular feature of Zap protocol, which is a concept created by Simon de Rouvier, pictured here, and he originally was called curation markets, in that we wanted to have a place where tokens could be curated or created, and then it sounds a lot like what Uniswap is today. And you can see, how do we retain our social liquidity in an increasingly automated and decentralized world? Rouvier credits Zap protocol with coining the term bonding curve. So it's like we're always, I think that we're trying to really get down to a place where underneath the tech is, we have this, DeFi space that we're in. Basically, we want to be able to empower the user to, mint their own tokens, but do so like kind of like easier than it is than going through the process of Ethereum by themselves. But also, something that was interesting is that whenever someone wants to start a token, they come and interface with like three problems, and that's like an ICO period. There's getting on exchanges, and then finding liquidity for those exchanges are all a part of trying to experiment with like token economics, because everyone should have their own token. So if you're trying to experiment or create something new, our tools are pretty interesting, because right here on the left we're talking about like our supply. Whoop. And we want to be able to mint against our reserve, and then instead of having I think that's something that Uniswap kind of like does right now, where they have like an automated market maker where it does follow a predefined curve, but is basically adjusting to the price as the people are buying and selling. What's interesting about this is what we're trying to do is in our project is that you want to be able to, if someone is interested in creating their own token, how can you set up how the project will unfold basically over in time? And I think that that's what Zap protocol is allowing us to do. So I thought that was really interesting to come on and talk about it.
And can you go back to the last slide, Eric, real quick?
Sure. This one or this one?
No. The one to the right, graph.
Oh, the graph, ding, right here?
Yeah. So essentially, for like breaking it down in the simplest form, automated market makers like Uniswap, like Eric was saying, essentially adjust on, like what the price is based on essentially this balancing act between wrapped ETH and, the other token that it represents on the other side. Zap, it does a couple different things. So one of the reasons, like, it's called the bonding curve, is it's essentially an advanced form of staking where you're going to have to, put something up as collateral to increment the price. In this case, it's Zap, right? So in Uniswap, you're essentially, putting, X amount of wrapped ETH and whatever the token is on the other side, and it's adjusting the price accordingly. With, bonding curve, as it were, in Zap, what you're going to be doing is stake Zap, and each time that there's more Zap in the smart contract that governs it, the price is going to follow the associated curve. And what you see right here is something we're familiar with, a curve up to the right, kind of in an exponential format, right? Meaning, as more and more people are buying, more tokens are created, or issued, and the price increments. So one of the very interesting things, without getting too much into it, is Zap allows for flexibility in this pricing mechanism. So you can have a steeper curve, you can have one that goes down, you can have all these other types of curves that allow you to, govern what the asset you're having. And for those of you that are jumping ahead, like, why would you want a flat or a downward sloping curve? Well, sometimes assets actually depreciate in price, so they go down in price as more and more people have access to them. So if you can imagine Uniswap as hey, look, I have Ether versus this token. Imagine like a Zap versus like an API query. So this is like a governance model dictating token economics.
Yeah,
And to kind of
that's something to
add,
really to focus in on is that when people are experimenting with that's like a part of like every good investor who's looking at the crypto space is like, what are the fundamentals, what are the supply, what is where is it available, what kind of token is it, and that's super important because we run into the first problem where you have people who mint an incredible amount of tokens in like a pre-mine, and then later down the line of a project it would hurt, obviously, because new people would be basically destroyed on the other end of a book. So it's like, if you can predefine where things are going and actually break it up into periods for like hatching periods, or trying to actually actually change that time period, then you can just eliminate having like an ICO where like, oh, okay, everybody who bought this ICO has like an insane amount of the token. Early investors, yes, but then as new people get in, you have these struggles. So you can actually govern how the project can unfold from its the beginnings.
yeah, and so also, one of these concepts that Simon de la Rouvier discussed is essentially like the curation component, like the continuous token generation aspect. As people are bonding and creating tokens, or unbonding and I guess like burning those tokens, essentially you want the pricing mechanism to follow with this, right? So you want this kind of form of continuous token generation. And why you might have a downward sloping curve. For instance, if you have an email list and now everybody has access to the email list at a given time, it is less valuable. So there's basically three individual components that go into Zap in its purest form. They are the pricing mechanisms or bonding curves. There are the oracleization, or the providing of data on the back end, and the sub token model. So when you stake, you're staking into a governance mechanism, which is dictating the price, the bonding curve. It is issuing you a sub token, which a lot of people are familiar with. Our native sub token was called a dot, but it could be named whatever you'd like it to be. And then the third component is this endpoint, or the service that you're staking it against. Now, it could be there, it doesn't necessarily have to, but it allows for these three things to come in. So what you have is some kind of tokenomics behind the oracles that you're working with, as well as the fractionalization of these oracles, or redeemable qualities for this data that you have, and also this pricing mechanism, which is dictating what is at a given time the price. So
Yeah.
for instance,
Hey,
if I break,
so can I interject here and just
sure.
expound on that? Because what I'm thinking about is one of our biggest use cases is that we've Zap.org has been involved with a voting patent called paper.vote, and really like where our technology is also in, like talking about that data, or like in this case we have the intellectual properties to a to actually use a voting machine on the blockchain, where we want to create tokens for someone to use this intellectual property, just like to show like you have provenance over something, is like a perfect example. Because we want to be able to tokenize something. It doesn't have to be property, like in the sense of like brick and mortar, but it can be an idea.
Absolutely. And so these pricing mechanisms, and if you just expand a little bit on like the Uniswap concept, which people are very familiar with, I guess it's like, in this case, it's like Zap versus something, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be a token. It could be something that's, three-dimensional, or, some kind of data feed, or abstract, but it allows for this trading of, basically anything that you can think of. And the way that we do that is by creating a layer 3 bridge into like the real world, which is, our Oracle, either inserting data in or watching for the redemption for somebody else to be able to provide these services, right? And I say redemption loosely, I know. I'm just saying, if you have a sub token and you wanted to turn it in for something, right? This is basically why these sub tokens. So you have two options. You can either, get your Zap back out and speculate on whether this is going to be used or not, right? In the same kind of format you would if you're buying and selling a token, or actually turn it in for its redeemable aspect on the back end. So it gives you two functions. So this kind of situation is really good for fractionalizations of like Eric was saying, like a license of a patent, or maybe some real estate shares, things like this. So we can actually have some governance behind that. And it gets a little bit technical, but we'll keep to the key points here. Eric, if you want to go into the next slide here.
I think that was pretty much it. I wanted to talk about like just basically diving what that is, but maybe if you had like a question, Raymond, I thought you were trying to, you were looking like you had a couple questions. Adam, are you there?
Yep.
Yeah. So I think that I think that this is the end of the actual slide here, but in terms of actually we have a pretty big release coming out right now for our user interface, because beforehand it was but there's more difficult for someone who is trying to experiment with these token generation. Our user interface that we've been coming up with actually helps the user to like actually use it like they would like Adobe Illustrator to actually commit and talk about these kind of complex like token economics scenarios, but actually for the entire like life cycle of a project, kind of like steer its governance, or at least if it's like price discovery.
Hey guys, sorry I had some connectivity issues.
Okay, yeah, I thought you had some questions, or if you wanted to like have anything to say.
Yeah, so we have a question from the audience, from Isaac
Cool.
Wilson. What is the difference between something like Zap and an Oracle provider like Chainlink?
Okay, that's a pretty easy question. I think that when we're talking about oracles, what we have like an oracle, like I think is a part of like our rich feature set that we have, and how I think like the only like the big difference is that I think that Chainlink is like really focused in on one particular use case for a pricing oracle. I think, but we have the ability to not just like have the mechanism for an oracle, like a trusted data source coming into the smart contract, but it's actually a whole market. So I can actually sell an entire token based off of that, instead of just having like Chainlink being like used if I was going to do a query. So it's like an entire, almost like an initial oracle offering, as it were.
Yeah, and I would say like I don't think necessarily, I think that the use cases are completely different. And the way that they went about, I guess, like implementing their oracles is as a boilerplate for companies to go get approved and host these nodes that provide data. And one of their main functions right now is, I guess, like the pricing or the actual data, the sheet metal data. The way that Zap's working, with its token economic models and fractionalization is a little bit different. Meaning, Chainlink, from my knowledge as of this moment, doesn't necessarily have, this native sub token that issues out for the fractionalization component, right? Also, I think that they have approved nodes that, you'd have to submit and then become a host of these specific feeds that go through this permissive process. Zap is a little bit different in the fact that I don't think we're necessarily going after the same thing, but also, there's two other components. One, the token economics, and the second is, this fractionalization. So where at a face value, you may be looking at it like, hey, look, we're going to query these oracles and have this token economics behind it, but we have an oracle service. I think Chainlink's like a more direct, just individual, hey, look, that I want this data and it's going to come straight back. So what we've added is a couple different components, within that. And, we're the first mainnet Oracle project. But it was a big focus of it, but it wasn't necessarily its entirety. I think Chainlink's really honed in on a very specific mission and goal. I do know recently they were talking about implementing some token economic models, maybe, but definitely not likely going to be the same type of thing because of what they're focused on, right? So our ultimate.
That's why we were saying we're here at DeFiCon. We want to talk about interesting new financial tools, and that's kind of like what our main goal is. So that includes something like something that I'm interested in. Synthetic elements are extremely important. NFTs, these are all things that are possible for us.
Absolutely.
Great. Thanks for your weighing in on that. So we have another question from Zachary. He says, is there a burn mechanism within the protocol, and can you implement them on a curve that you create?
Yes.
Natively.
Yes, that is I guess like the big sell for like, okay, I want to be able to introduce this concept. So yes, on our user interface, you will be able to create your own ERC20, soon to be NFT. You can control the supply. So if you think about your supply and then this new reserve currency that you have that you're generating, that we can so yes, basically to answer your question.
Yeah, I also think it's worth saying too, I'm a big proponent of Bitcoin. I was like very early in on the deflationary mechanism behind Bitcoin. But I think, people went a little overboard with it, right? When you're talking about an individual company that may want to issue, say, like time on a calendar, which continues to grow, right? Or, if you link like an API or something up, right? Like these things kind of have to be some kind of other type of system than just the deflationary. So the thing is, the continuous token generation allows for individuals to be able to govern kind of like their own supply of different things, right? Whether this is gift credits or something else, they're going to want to be able to issue more or less, or have it be continuous in our case, right? Where you have, for lack of a better term, like you turn it in or burn it, right? And then the generator of the curve gets paid, right? And then you're going to want the ability to be able to generate another one, right? When somebody else bonds, and then as the price increments. So this is a core component of it. And Eric, it's actually also worth mentioning, like, people don't have kind of budgets when they issue their own token to go and audit their own code and everything. So this gives you a really solid framework to work within. So it's got a simple set of rules. It's something you can issue and expand upon, or build out more on it if you wanted. But if you just wanted to hit go and just kind of issue your own token economics experiment with something, maybe issue something else, this is going to be a really good, easy way to do it. And, with the new wizard and everything that we have in the new site coming out, the version 2 of it, you're not going to be bogged down by kind of like, complex polynomial functions to kind of generate those curves that are over there. It's really going to be the drag and drop kind of stuff. So if you want to start with something, or maybe do a raise or do some kind of other thing, you're just going to be able to post it. Maybe you want multiple tokens for multiple different endpoints, right? So what you do is create a provider account and issue maybe 7 different tokens. One might be a governance, one might be a raise, one might be a dev pool project for another one, but it would all be under the same provider. So you would generate these curves. Another thing that we're kind of working on right now is kind of reputation management, because we believe it's important, and we don't necessarily want, there's probably going to be a lot of curves that get issued, just like there's on kind of like Ethereum, where you have like 1 million different tokens and you don't know which ones are good or which ones are bad. So you're going to want some kind of marketplace. And that's really like the crux of Zap, is like to be able to create, I guess like 1 million Apple.
Yeah, it's like your own economy. You want to have
like
a system.
I think decentralization occurs when you allow a lot of vendors to compete in an open market, right? So you're going to have like if you can imagine a marketplace with 1 million Apple vendors. One guy selling rotten apples, you're not going to go to him. You're going to go to the guy with the big juicy ones at a good price. So what this allows for is multiple vendors of all different types of products, services, and everything else. And it allows the free market to kind of govern itself in a lot of ways. And, I think that this is better than the alternative, which is, hey, look, you're an approved vendor, pay a licensing fee, come on in, and we're going to make this happen. So we're trying to keep in the ethos by allowing as many people and make it as accessible as possible to get the best products out of it, or services out of it. And I think that it's really going to surprise us as we start releasing like one-click templates and oracles and everything else that we have being built out right now. I mean, our repo is pretty massive. We haven't really public sourced a lot of it yet, but we definitely intend to do so. As we test it and run it through the merits and do due diligence on it. How does the user interface make it easy for?
Yeah. What's the next question?
Sure. The next question is, how do you plan to combat ETH fees for smaller users looking to bond? With current gas prices, it's a little bit crazy for these smaller players.
Yeah, that's super true. I think that we're all looking at 4 different large I guess like avenues, and that affects all Ethereum users. Like right now we are an Ethereum mainnet coin, but I see that we exploring uh layer, like literally having another chain, um moving towards that, or there's others private like proof of authority chains that we were exploring, as well as optimistic zero knowledge rollups. So I mean, those as they roll out, there's like the top two on my mind right now are Optimism and Off Chain Labs. So like those are really big players in the game, and that we are trying to see what works best for us. To answer
Yeah,
the question.
I think Eric and I also are, kind of looking at, the blockchain as it works currently. It's meant to be extremely redundant and slow for a lot of reasons, making sure that everybody gets a copy of the ledger, and people have tried to speed it up. IOTA did some interesting things with Tangle, trying to create like DAG systems where you have really fast payments, right? But like I think a lot of people forget, like the original decentralized applications or dApps were things like BitTorrent, where you had kind of mesh networks that were verifying and creating hashes for different things. So we're looking at kind of moving up the chain as opposed to up the layers rather than going back down. We think Bitcoin, Ethereum, Tron, all these other companies are nailing it. Like they know what a blockchain is. They've created great ecosystems and everything. It's not necessarily our place to go, hey, we're going to create our own blockchain, but rather how can we make it faster and better and move up the layers to be able to get like real time data at cheap prices.
Yeah,
And one
and
of
there's
the
no reason that we can't be a part of those as well.
yeah
We have and it's very interesting for Zap to bring its protocol to what we know as like Binance Smart Chain, Tron. Just like what Adam was saying, is that I think that what we do is try to develop the decentralized um, app, and that will pretty much follow the network that is the best, but also trying to have interconnections to all of them and bridge.
yeah. And I think also like one of the key concepts, like Eric was saying, like this ZK rollup, actually hashing and inserting and improving it right into these lower level chains in aggregate, proving that all of these things happen right within a certain time frame, and inserting them into blocks is going to allow us to be a little bit more nimble. So our goal is to be on as many chains as possible. But what I'm saying is, as you move up the layers, it's easy to kind of hop back on and go down and work on some of these other ones.
Yeah, I think that's part of like our work. I think that's interesting. We're trying to find new technologies. Like Polkadot is really great. All these Cardano's coming with a like an EVM equivalent. So it's interesting that we want to find it exciting as we grow, and so does our team.
Sure, for sure. So Isaac has a question. Is Zap only on Ethereum, or does it have cross-chain functionality? Like, are you guys planning to scale it to other chains?
Okay, yeah, I think I mentioned kind of a minute ago, but yeah, I think that creating a bridge to like Binance Smart Chain, and creating our own chain to have that chain connectivity is definitely like almost something that you have to do inside this DeFi space. I think that's just like it's like not like a feature, but just like the baseline, because we want to develop app. That's like our job is to like really hone in on the best like decentralized app as this entire scene changes around us.
All right. We're getting close to the end of the session. So thanks for the presentation on Zap, guys. Any final remarks?
I just, I'd invite everybody to kind of check us out. There's a lot of different things that we have, going on in our ecosystem. A lot of people are really, excited about some of the changes that are coming down the line. I do know that there are a lot of questions in the community about like how the UI is going to work, and what's the marketplace going to look like. Essentially, if you can imagine. I guess like it'll all explain itself in time. We really just tried to make it a lot easier for people to use, and I think it was like
For
more
sure.
of as our marketing guy says, push button get cookie type deal, where it's like a lot easier to use and for people to be rewarded and not have to figure everything out. So I think it's a good start and a good step in the right direction for that with the new UI. But I do think ultimately it will look much different longer term, than kind of where we're at right now. We're still really in the early stages of blockchain, even though we're 10 years in, or 10 years plus in. And I think that, people are coming out with new stuff all the time. There's a lot of projects, even, this week, Eric and I were researching a brand new project, and I think that we're learning from the market, definitely. And there's a lot of people innovating out there.
Yeah.
And it's incredible.
We're all literally, I feel like we're like in a room like with only like 10 people in it. I think that, it's like really early, and it's really great to see what people value. And then, it's interesting to even have that relationship as a, I guess in the long scheme of things, like a startup. We have like, we want to be able to commit to listening to the community and, bringing them the features that they think is really cool. And, new words like DeFi come out of, nowhere. Basically, we're out here trying to write software and try to make it work, the future.
Absolutely. All right. I think that sums it up, though. If anybody's interested, definitely check us out. I think Twitter's probably the best starting point, or the zap.org webpage. You can see
It's like
kind of like the old. Yeah.
I mean, we like, we are revamping the UI, so that's like the place to actually like interact with us. But if you add us, we'll probably we'll talk to you via Twitter and reach out. And I think that just that is like, something that is like a breath of fresh air with inside of like any of these projects. You're like, okay, listen to what people want and do it. It's kind of great.
Yeah, we will be implementing at some point in time too, like the snapshot, like everybody else has, and put all that stuff up too. That's definitely on the roadmap for short term for anybody who's been curious about it. We do want feedback, but we've been really focused on kind of getting this out. So I appreciate everybody waiting, and we're really excited about the future. Thank you.
Sure, guys.
Yeah,
Feel free to
for having us.
Your Twitter links in the chat box below.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so that wraps up the end of DeFiCon. It's been a really long day. We started at 5:30 this morning.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, they're all the way in Europe. So
you guys are the best, man. This has been awesome, and there's a lot of awesome projects.
Great.
Yeah, it's been a long day. So everyone have a good night, a great weekend, and we'll see you at our next event.
See you.